For 6 years, I was the one who showed up. For 6 years, I drove my mother to her oncology appointments at the Juravinsky Cancer Center every second Tuesday. For 6 years, I managed her medications, coordinated with her palliative care team, handled her insurance claims with Sun Life, filed her disability tax credit forms with the CRA, and sat beside her on the bad nights when she couldn't sleep and didn't want to be alone. My brother lived 40 minutes away in Oakville. He visited maybe 4 times a year, maybe. So when my mother's estate lawyer read her will in that small wood-paneled office on King Street last March, and I heard my brother's name attached to everything, the house in Hamilton, the TFSA, the RSTs, the modest investment portfolio she had quietly built over 30 years, I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I reached into my bag, pulled out an envelope, and set it gently on the table. That's when my brother's expression changed. My name is Vera Langford. I was 39 years old when I understood that doing the right thing and being rewarded for it are two completely different events. But I also learned something else that day. Something my mother had been trying to teach me for a long time. I'll get there. My mother was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer when I was 33. I remember exactly where I was when she called, standing in the parking garage at McMaster University, where I was working in the grants administration office, about to drive home. She said it very calmly. That was her way. She said, "The doctor called this morning. It's not good news, but I'm not ready to fall apart, so I need you to help me think clearly." And that was how it started. I want to be honest about something. I didn't take on the caregiving role because anyone asked me to. My brother, I'll call him by his role here, as he called me by mine, which was the one who lives close, did ask once if I wanted to split the responsibilities. It was early, maybe 3 weeks after the diagnosis, and he suggested we alternate months. I said yes. He did the first month, drove her to 2 appointments, called me when he couldn't figure out her medication schedule. And by month 2, things at his work had gotten complicated. And could I just cover for now? I covered for now. Now became forever. I'm not telling this story to make him a villain. That's not the point. But I want to be accurate. The thing about being a caregiver that nobody tells you is that it doesn't feel like one big sacrifice. It feels like 1,000 small ones, stacked so gradually on top of each other, that you don't notice the weight until you try to stand up straight and realize you can't remember the last time you did. I turned down a promotion at McMaster in 2020 because it would have required me to travel to Ottawa twice a month for training. My mother was in the middle of her 2nd chemotherapy cycle. I told my supervisor I appreciated the opportunity and that the timing wasn't right. She nodded like she understood. I don't think anyone fully understands unless they've been there. I stopped going to my book club. I stopped seeing my friend Deborah regularly. She lives in Burlington, and by the time I had driven home from my mother's house in the evenings, I didn't have anything left. A relationship I had been in for almost 2 years ended quietly because the man I was seeing told me, not unkindly, that he felt like he was always 3rd on my list. He wasn't wrong. I just didn't have a different answer for him. There were good moments, too. I want to say that. My mother and I watched every season of Schitt's Creek together during her recovery periods. We ordered from the Indian place on Locke Street that she loved, and she'd eat half a container of butter chicken even when her appetite was terrible. We talked about things we'd never talked about before. Her childhood in Thunder Bay, her first years in Hamilton, what it felt like when my father left when my brother and I were small. Those conversations were a gift. I wouldn't trade them, but I would be lying if I said there weren't nights I sat in my car in her driveway for 10 minutes before going inside because I needed a moment to prepare myself. That's the part people don't photograph. My brother called every Sunday. I'll give him that. He was good on the phone. He asked the right questions. He sent cards on her birthday and flowers after the hard appointments. When he did visit, he was warm and present, and my mother lit up around him. She always did. He was charming in a way that filled a room, and she adored him with the particular softness that mothers sometimes reserve for the child, who is just slightly out of reach. I noticed. I told myself it didn't matter. I focused on what needed to be done. By the 5th year, my mother had moved from managing the illness to accepting that management had its limits. She began working with her palliative care nurse more closely. She updated her advanced care directive. She told me she wanted to die at home, and I made sure that happened. I took 3 weeks of compassionate care leave from work, which, thank goodness, is something you can actually access in this country. And I was with her almost every day of her final weeks. My brother came for the last 5 days. He held her hand. He cried more openly than I did. At the funeral, he gave the eulogy, because he has always been better with words in front of a crowd, and it was beautiful. People hugged him afterward and said she would have been so proud. She would have been. She was proud of him. She loved him completely. I kept telling myself that was what mattered. The estate meeting was scheduled for 3 weeks after the funeral. We sat in the office of her lawyer, a careful, measured man who had handled her affairs for over a decade. My aunt was there, my mother's older sister, who had flown in from Winnipeg, and who kept squeezing my hand when she thought I wasn't looking, as though she already knew something I didn't. My brother arrived in a jacket I hadn't seen before. He looked rested. He brought coffee for everyone from the Tim Hortons down the street, which was a nice gesture, and he set one in front of me without being asked. I remember thinking, he's trying. He does try in the ways that are easy. The lawyer opened the file. He went through the preliminaries, the funeral expenses, the outstanding accounts, the process for transferring assets. My mother had been organized. Everything was documented. Then he began reading the distribution. The house, my brother's name, the TFSA, the RRSPs, the investment accounts. My brother's name, her personal effects, the furniture, the contents of the house. To be divided at my brother's discretion. A small cash bequest to my aunt. My name appeared once, near the end, attached to her jewelry collection, and a sum that would have covered about 4 months of her medical supply costs. The room was quiet for a moment. My aunt had stopped squeezing my hand. I think she was holding her breath. My brother looked at the table. Not at me, at the table. He had the grace, at least, not to look relieved in front of me. But I had known him my whole life, and I could see his shoulders drop slightly, the way they do when something resolves in your favor. The lawyer finished, set down the document, and looked at me with an expression I cannot fully describe. It was professional, and behind it was something that might have been an apology. Nobody spoke. I could feel them all waiting for me to react, to object, to fall apart. My aunt opened her mouth and then closed it. I took a breath. Then I reached into my bag and placed an envelope on the table. My mother asked me to give you this, I said to the lawyer, after the will was read. My brother looked at the envelope. What is that? I don't know all of it, I said. She gave it to me last November and told me to keep it sealed until today. Those were her words. The lawyer picked it up. On the front, in my mother's precise, old-fashioned cursive, she had beautiful handwriting, always, were the words, for the estate meeting, to be read aloud. He broke the seal. The letter was 3 pages, handwritten. He unfolded it carefully, adjusted his reading glasses, and began. If you're reading this, then I've managed to stay organized until the end, which I'm choosing to count as a personal victory. My aunt made a small sound. That was my mother, even at the end, even in a letter written for after she was gone. A small joke to cut the tension. The lawyer continued. I want to start by saying something to both of my children. I love you equally. I have always loved you equally. What comes next is not a statement about who I love more. It is a statement about what I understand. My brother shifted in his seat. For the past 6 years, Vera has been present in ways I cannot fully account for here. She drove me to appointments I was afraid to attend alone. She sat with me through the nights when the medication made sleep impossible. She gave up things, professional things, personal things, that she never mentioned to me directly, but that I noticed. Vera has always thought I didn't notice. I noticed everything. My throat had closed. I have chosen to leave the estate as written in the will for reasons that I will explain. But the estate is not the whole of what I have. The lawyer paused and turned to a fresh page. 7 years ago, I opened a registered education savings plan that I eventually converted, and separately, I established a non-registered investment account through a financial advisor that I have never discussed with either of you. This account has been growing since 2017. The assets in this account are not part of the probated estate. They are held outside of the will, in Vera's name, as of the documentation signed in November of last year. The room was very still. My brother looked at the lawyer. What does that mean? The lawyer set down the letter and opened a second folder he had kept to the side of the table. He confirmed it quietly, professionally. The account existed. The transfer of ownership had been completed before my mother's death. The assets had passed directly to me outside of probate. No estate tax complications, no legal contest available. The value was nearly 4 times what the estate was worth. My aunt exhaled slowly. My brother looked at his coffee cup. The lawyer picked up the letter and continued. I structured it this way deliberately. The estate, with the house and the registered accounts, carries administrative responsibilities. It requires decisions, upkeep, eventual sale. I chose to leave that to your brother because I wanted to give him something that required him to be present, to make choices, to be accountable in a way that phone calls do not require. I hope it brings him closer to home. There was a pause as the lawyer turned the final page. I gave Vera something different. I gave her the result of what I watched her do for 6 years. Steadiness, showing up, being trustworthy with the hard things. The money in that account grew because someone managed it quietly and patiently for a long time. Vera, that is you. That has always been you. I was crying by then. Not loudly. I was just crying. I want both of my children to understand something before this letter ends. I did not keep this account secret to punish your brother. I kept it private because I wanted this moment to be clear. Not contested, not complicated. Clear. Vera showed up. That is not a small thing. It should not be treated as one. To my son, I love you. I need you to sit with what you're feeling right now and let it teach you something. It is not too late to be the person you're capable of being. I believe that completely. To my daughter, thank you for every Tuesday, for every prescription, for the nights you stayed when you could have left. Thank you. The lawyer folded the letter with the same care he'd used to open it and set it on the table. My brother didn't say anything for a long time. My aunt reached across and took my hand again. Outside, through the window on King Street, Hamilton was just going about its day. A city bus, a woman with a stroller, the ordinary movement of ordinary life. Finally, my brother looked at me. His eyes were red. I didn't know, he said. I know you didn't. I should have been there more. I didn't tell him he was right. I didn't tell him. It was fine. I just said, she knew you loved her. He nodded. He looked back at the table. I could have said more. I thought about it. 6 years of early mornings and canceled plans and phone calls at 11 p.m. had earned me at least one speech. But I thought about my mother. About the way she wrote that letter, the care she put into making it land without cruelty. The small joke at the beginning to make it easier to bear. And I understood what she was trying to model for me. You can be right and still be gracious. Those two things are not opposites. I didn't need him to apologize. I didn't need the room to witness his regret. What had already happened was already real, whether he acknowledged it or not. The meeting ended. My aunt hugged me in the parking lot for a long time without saying much. The February air was cold, the way Hamilton February always is, sharp and honest, and I stood in it for a moment after she let go and just breathed. In the weeks that followed, my brother called more than he had in the previous year. He drove to Hamilton twice to deal with things at the house. Once, he called me on a Tuesday night. I don't think he knew the significance of Tuesdays for me, but maybe he did. And he talked for almost an hour. About our mother, about his own guilt, about things he wished he had done differently. I listened. I told him the truth where I could. I was not cruel, and I was not falsely generous. We are not the same as we were before. I don't know exactly what we are, but I think my mother expected that too, and I think she believed we'd figure it out. She usually gave us more credit than we deserved. I went back to McMaster in the spring. My supervisor, the same one who had offered me the promotion 4 years earlier, told me there was a senior position opening and asked if I would consider putting my name forward. I did. I got it. I rejoined my book club. I called Deborah, and we drove up to Elora for a weekend in May, stayed at a small inn, walked along the gorge, and I felt for the first time in a long time like a person with a life that belonged to me. I still drive past the house sometimes. My brother is working through the estate process slowly. It is complicated, as my mother perhaps intended, and the house is still in the family for now. When I pass it, I think about her butter chicken containers in the recycling. And the way she laughed at Schitt's Creek even on the nights she was exhausted. And the sound of her handwriting moving across paper in that careful, deliberate way. She left me more than money. She left me proof that she had been watching. I spent 6 years wondering if anyone saw what I was doing. If the appointments and the prescriptions and the 11 p.m. phone calls were disappearing into nothing, unnoticed, unremarked upon. I told myself I didn't need recognition. Most days I even believed it. It turns out she saw every single one. Some people will tell you that doing the right thing is its own reward. I think that's something people say when they want you to stop expecting anything. The truth is more complicated and more hopeful. Doing the right thing doesn't always come with immediate recognition. Sometimes the recognition is being prepared quietly, carefully in a non-registered account that's been growing for 7 years by someone who noticed more than you ever knew. My mother used to say, show up for the people you love and trust that the showing up matters, even when nobody's keeping score. She was keeping score. She just didn't tell me. I think that's the most her thing she ever did.